This episode of Sewing Out Loud is brought to you by Baby Lock. ZD and I sew on Baby Lock sewing machines and sergers every day. Baby Lock is the perfect long-term sewing companion. Their machines are reliably built, and the company is on the cutting edge of sewing technology. Just wait until later in the episode when we tell you about how you can use the camera on your phone to achieve perfect embroidery placement.
Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of ZD Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, ZD and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And this is ZD Donahue.
And I can't see the podcast notes, so
No.
Mom's in charge here.
You might not even like them.
We'll see what happens.
What if you don't like them?
Oh, there they are.
I'm
Okay.
not sure you can understand them or blah, blah,
I
blah.
can't believe
don't
we
know.
haven't done this
Okay.
yet.
Yeah.
Like, can you?
I guess not.
I don't know.
Because it seems like we've done everything. How long? Okay, so like right now, have we been podcasting like
It'll be
2.5
3
years?
years
3 years
in January.
So,
So
over
2.5.
Over 2.5.
Yeah, over 2.5 years. So 3 years in January is just how I keep thinking of it. But yeah, no, it's really amazing. So we're going to start a series on Home
My
Deck.
God, I've been sitting across from you like every week for 3 years, no matter what.
I mean, you've been sitting across from me for like 30 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but
We've been
yeah,
hanging out for a long time.
Yes.
That's why every once in a while I get contacted for podcasting advice.
Yes.
At my job, they want to start a podcast, and they're like, "So, like, do we script it out?" And I was like, "Well, you might have to." No.
I'm sure some people do.
Anyway,
Or they at least have an outline.
You know.
Of course, some people don't go on tangents like we do.
I did, just so you
We
know,
like tangents, everybody.
when someone tags me in a post on Instagram, and then you comment on it, I see it. So, gotten a few things where I think people like didn't think I'd see something, but I'm like tagged in the post, and anyway,
Is it kind of mean?
maybe just a little. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm fine.
There's lots of
I'm
mean
fine.
things out there. It happens all the time.
I'm okay, if you were wondering. All right, so moving on.
You got over
Here's
it.
the deal. Mom has done a lot of Home Deck, okay? And maybe because we were sort of focusing, I mean, we still
Well,
are
on the
focused on
wardrobe.
garment sewing.
But you can also dress your furniture,
Yes.
or your house,
And
or your car, or
absolutely.
your boat,
Or your camper.
or your camper,
Your glamper.
blah, 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 or your dog's house.
No, Mom's just done so much Home Deck. Well, and Home Deck and costuming, and then like certain types of clothing.
Yeah,
It can
I've used a lot of Home Deck fabric and costuming.
it can all
Actually,
cross
I've worn
over.
Home Deck. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't want it to particularly look like a couch, but I have worn Home Deck fabric.
The term that I loved best, and this is from Stevens College faculty member who was there, she called it a couch killer. Like if someone looked like they were upholstered
It looks like you killed a couch to make the garment.
make the garment. And so every
I've had
time,
a couple of nightmares about
like
stuff
every
like that.
time I've tried to choose sort of a damask fabric or maybe a plaid for
Right.
something, I'm like, am I going to be a couch killer?
Well, and sometimes you don't know till you put it together.
That's totally true.
Or like, one time I made a dress
uh-huh.
and it looked good, and it was kind of a dilemma for me anyway, this
Right.
person I was costuming. And I did use some Home Deck, and it was kind of couchy.
You're worried
looking.
it's going to look couchy.
It was kind of couchy
Yeah.
looking, and I had this dream that she looked like this like overstuffed cartoon chair when I put it on her, and I was just mortified, and I was like, it's dress rehearsal,
See if it works.
Guess I'll try it. And it was so cute.
I think
but it was so funny because that was my fear.
I think especially because you choose those big Home Deck stuff
Yeah.
for the bigger,
Well,
more
but it was for
like
But it was for stage
Yeah,
too.
yeah, right.
I wanted it to look like I
Sure.
wanted to see the print.
there's a fine line though,
Yes.
right? Between
Yeah.
this is another podcast using Home Deck fabrics for garments, so let's just put a pin in that.
Okay,
right?
let's put
Right?
that someplace else.
Put a pin in that.
We'll put that in this series at
Let's
the
put
end.
a
How's
straight
that?
pin in that.
What we're going to try and do, because we're coming off a tangent and back into our lane here, we're going to try and do a Home Deck series.
Yeah, we're gonna
Okay.
get some of this
And
knowledge
I think
out
that
there.
might be good for like a
Seg-
to wind it up at the end, whatever
Oh, yeah,
the last
that'd be
series,
great.
where would you use Home Deck?
Yes.
And why? And what's the difference in the fabric and all
And
that?
when you might want to be careful and not look
Right.
like a couch killer,
Right.
Okay, so, Mom, you have done Home Deck on a grand scale.
Yeah.
You've done gigantic drapes.
Yes.
You have done, throw pillows. You have made duvet covers. You have done small drapes. You have done, smaller pillows. You've made throws. You have recovered chairs, reupholstered. So,
Yes.
I just want to let everybody know ZD's got some Home Deck chops on her. Okay? She really does.
I'm never making pleated drapes again. I just want to make that announcement so I stick to it.
Yeah.
Okay? Yes.
So, ZD wrote the podcast notes. What ZD thought would be good and that I thought would be great is in this episode, this first episode of the series, just to talk about some of ZD's generalized rules for home deck sewing.
Right.
Maybe you could give us a few brief examples of a rule. And then in subsequent episodes, we're going to talk about an equipment episode and
Right.
fabric enclosure
Be
episode.
more in detail too.
Get more
Yes.
in depth there. Actually, write down that recovering versus reupholstering versus slip covers. Maybe, I don't know if that'll be its own episode.
Okay.
Which just sounds exhausting to write
Okay.
down, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So ZD has these podcast notes. Your first note
Well,
here.
Okay, and how I actually came up with these notes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I haven't done Home Deck
Professionally.
Well, I haven't done
in a while.
Yeah, I haven't done professional in a while, but I just haven't done a whole lot of really in-depth Home Deck. I've done some pillows lately, things like that, but I haven't done cushions or couches or something.
You just recovered those chairs in your dining room.
That was all staple gun. Well, I guess I pieced it.
We're
But
going to talk
anyway,
about
yeah.
staplers.
We'll talk about staplers too. But anyway, I don't consider that sewing. I don't know why, but even though I did piece the tops together. But anyway, what this was we bought a camper. It's 3 years old now, and not only was this is mostly the dinette, I guess.
Area, yeah.
We also just didn't like the whole decor inside. I called it some sort of faux cowboy retro, whatever. It's just not.
It was a little gross.
It's
gross.
not me.
No.
Okay, it's somebody.
There you
I'm
go.
sure it's not me.
Look
It's
at me
not
making a value judgment on
It's
style.
just
Don't
not.
do it
It
now.
is not me. It's really not. It's probably not that bad, but it's just not me. And it's very brown, and I'm not brown. Okay.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'm far from neutral.
Yeah, it was very greigey brown.
Yeah. So anyway, the cushions. One thing, this is not an expensive camper. Okay, this is bare bones camper.
Okay.
So the cushions were also not sturdy enough.
Uh-huh.
When we sat on, your rear end went straight down to the plywood that was under it. So,
Okay.
The foam was weak. They started popping out at the seams, things like this. My husband and I are not hard on furniture or anything like this. I just think, it wasn't the best quality.
Right.
Okay, but that was all right because, we didn't like it anyway. So anyway, my husband's like, well, get this foam. I can't stand this foam. So I bought some foam.
Yep.
And then he said, well, what are we going to cover it in? And blah, blah. Well, okay, so we could come up to the studio and pick out fabric. Right?
Yes, because we have a lot of home deck fabric.
Right, which is what we did. So anyway, this is sort of more of a project than I've done lately, covering and really all this is box cushions.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
got you thinking about home deck.
Yeah,
Okay.
it did. It got me thinking about Home Deck. So I thought, the first thing is when I sew Home Deck, and these are real basics, I usually use a stitch length of 4.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of the fabric, okay? The fabric is heavier. You don't need those little stitches, okay?
Yeah, we need a graphic or a GIF we can share every time in the group because lengthening a stitch lengthening your stitch length on certain fabrics will fix a lot of problems.
Right.
And it has been coming up a lot in the group.
And it doesn't always weaken the seam.
That's right.
You know, don't think it makes it weaker.
Right.
Okay, sometimes you can get stitches too close together, and that weakens the seam.
Yeah, that's not always good.
So what you need is the correct stitch length.
Okay, so we have talked about this before, but
Right,
it
right.
needs to be said again.
Yeah. You need the correct stitch length for what you're doing. You need the correct needle. So I used to often, there are like upholsters needles and things. I've often used, denim was a
Denim needle.
Yeah, a 90 or a 100 with, you know, the big heavy stuff. That was sort of a standard for me.
Uh-huh.
If I went to the 90 or the 100. Now, there are some other needles you could go to.
Yeah, I want to just go back to stitch length real quick and just rehash this. Oftentimes on your machine, if you choose a straight stitch, the default length is 2.5 millimeters.
Right.
Okay, I want everybody to know that.
And I'm talking 4 here.
Yes, and so then ZD's saying she goes up to a 4.
Right.
This is because the home deck in general that we're talking about is these heavier fabrics.
And not only that, is there's not always a lot of stress on a home deck seam.
Great.
Okay.
Good point.
Now, maybe on a seat cushion, if you're sitting on it and, you know, rubbing up against it or whatever. But you're going to use heavier fabric then, so you're going to need a 4 anyway. But, you know, things like, you know, things that hang like a drape or something like that, there's not a lot of wear specifically on the seam.
You may find that if you use a real short stitch length on some of these heavier fabrics, your project won't advance through your machine as well.
That's correct.
Okay. If you have decided to use some kind of heavier duty thread, which may not always be necessary either, the shorter stitch length can mess that up.
That's right.
You can have some bad looping. Okay. The shorter stitch length can over perforate some fabrics. Like you said when you said weaken the seam.
That's right. A shorter stitch length can actually weaken the fabric because it's piercing it closer. Just think about, you know, how you would perforate anything. The closer the perforations, the more likely it is to break there.
So don't be afraid. Like Mom said, if you're afraid, go to a 3.5. Right.
There you go.
Okay. If you're afraid, go to a 3.5. 3.5 almost is like, you know, almost going to be okay for almost anything. And then go to the 4. And you can always test your seam, right? So I just wanted to give people a little perspective when you say go to a 4, you know, what that could mean.
Oh, no, I think people do need, you know, when I make things like purses, generally, I'm on a 4.
Yeah.
I treat many purses, especially things that are, you know, say canvas weight or something, I treat them like home deck.
I have been going up to a 3. Well, okay, the garment I just made that we discussed, you know, last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, that denim, you know, shirt dress that's now my trench coat. The 3 was just working better. Well, it's a little thicker fabric.
Well, the other thing is, okay, if you think about this, if your fabric is thick or bulky or stiff, which denim is, of course, and you have this tiny little stitch length, you're trying to pack those fibers in a smaller space. Ooh, why does my seam look puckery?
Yeah.
Because there's not enough room
your
there.
seam's going to look better. What I was just going to say, which you kind of said, is the reason your fabric's heavier is because the fibers are bigger generally, right? The threads that are making up that fabric. Right. And when you get into home deck and that kind of like chenille-y stuff.
Oh, I did that today.
Those are gigantic fibers. Yes. I have the throw that, you know, maybe we'll talk about that in a one of these series, but I have one of those throws that's made out of that fabric and I absolutely love it. But yeah, definitely a 4 on that kind of thing would be necessary. And you're using the lock stitch on your sewing machine, you know, to make this seam. Maybe we'll get into other things a little later, but yeah, so a 4 stitch length. So yes, and you are talking about needles. Next, right.
Well,
I'm
and
sorry,
I did. I don't have much more to say than that, but a denim needle, you know, works out really well. A 90 or 100. if you've got, say, maybe a cotton chintz or something like that, sure, an 80 or 90 might work too.
Yeah, and I think we might get into that a little more.
Even a universal. Again, you have to think about your weight.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about what it's about, what it's for, all that stuff. Thread, and you talked about thread. I'm sorry, I'm a Metrosine, disciple.
Hey, you know who else is a Metrosine disciple? Russell from
yeah.
Soapbox Productions.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I didn't believe you, but it's just kind of nice every once in a while to hear
Yes,
someone else be like,
yes.
yeah, that's my
And if
favorite
you go,
thread too.
you're not going to use upholstery weight thread. The Hollywood chair.
Yeah.
How much wear has the Hollywood chair got?
A lot.
Okay, well that's Metrosine. And when I made a harness for you to fly in,
Yep.
what did I use?
You
I
used
used
Metrosine.
and you were 20 feet in the air, and I trusted that
Okay,
stuff.
this is normal construction thread. We would
Yes.
use this to make a garment.
Right.
Okay, we use it to make
We
garments.
consider it our all-purpose thread.
Yeah, that's our all-purpose.
Right.
We call it a construction thread.
Right.
And then, so Mom's saying I would use this to make, a dress.
Right.
Or I'd use it to do my cushions.
Right.
Yeah, I would use it to sew together heavy fabrics. I would
Right.
use it to sew together leather.
It's exactly what I used to sew
Okay.
leather with. Right.
Yeah, this thread
As well as Russell.
I think
Yes.
I think those heavy threads, they really are a place where people can get tripped
Heavy
up.
threads
and they're
can
not
really,
necessary.
really mess you up.
Yeah.
First of all, home machines don't tend to do them well.
Right.
Okay? It's not made for it, and that's just the fact. Now, you can get an upholstery machine. You
there
can
you go.
invest in that. If you have an upholstery shop, you may want to.
Mhm.
Okay? I have yet to find anything that I could not sew on a good quality home machine with Metrosine thread
There you
and
go.
the right needle. It hasn't been a problem.
The heaviest I like to go on our machine is that top stitching thread by
12 weight.
Yep.
Yeah.
By it's Metler. It's
Yeah,
a Metler
it's a
top
Metler
stitching
too.
thread. I'm so sorry. It's a 12 weight. And even that sometimes,
Right.
it
But do you use it in your bobbin?
no ma'am.
That's right.
No ma'am.
And when I'm constructing something, I really want the same weight in my bobbin.
Yeah.
Okay. When I'm constructing a seam, you just said top stitching, and that's what
right.
that was for.
That's right. It's a decorative thing, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I have sewn, canvas boat covers that have lasted through winters and sun and, weather and everything else, and being pulled on and off of a boat and all that, and they're intact. They've stayed intact as long as the stitching that came from any factory.
Metrosine. Okay.
Right.
And it comes, I believe, in 3 sizes. I used to sell a big variety pack, and I was trying to get away from, carrying the physical product so much because it's hard to keep up with the shipping. But that might be something, I don't know, maybe bring that back. But we sold a black, a white, our magic mauve, and
mauve
a gray.
or mauve,
Mauve or mauve.
depending on where you live.
Okay. And those I would sell in the big 10,000 meter spool. That sounds really big, but it'll still fit on a standard spool pin on a sewing machine. Okay. And then there's like a half, and then there's like a quarter of that. And the itty bitty spools, honestly, I don't know.
I know. Well, the
I don't know.
only time I've ever even bought an itty bitty the little spool is when I was really trying to find a color, and I don't do that often anyway.
Yeah, we don't really match
because I
that
don't match
often.
color. I mean,
Yeah.
I am not the person that has to because I make a seam that doesn't show.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Okay, so Metrosine.
Okay.
What's
While
next?
we're talking about thread,
Oh,
your bobbins are there. Actually, I just won bobbin chicken today and didn't even know I was
you
playing
want
it.
bobbin chicken?
I did had like a half inch left on my thing after I pulled it out.
Bam.
It was really, really kind of funny. But I had wound 2 bobbins.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I was doing 4 cushions.
Ooh.
This is a lot of seams.
Hey, are you sewing with orange thread?
No,
Oh.
I'm sewing
Oh, you're sewing with
a tan thread.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so anyway, you looked at the wrong
We're looking
machine.
at the wrong machine. Yeah.
So anyway, and then over there I'm sewing with white and gray and black or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, wind enough bobbins that you're not aggravated if you do run out of thread, okay? I don't know why anybody has again,
Buy
if you
some
don't have
bobbins.
at least 20 bobbins in your studio,
You could be in a world of
Put
hurt.
them on.
Just get 'em.
Put them on your Rosh Hashanah list, on your Christmas list, on whatever list you get gifts for, your birthday list, because bobbins are part of sewing, and we need to. But anyway,
but the bobbins. Okay,
Right.
here's the thing. With home dec, a lot of times it's like long seams.
Well, it is long seams.
You know?
In fact, it's much more than a
Long
garment.
seams, yeah.
I mean, garment are really not very big seams if you think about it. And so a box cushion, you have, like
I mean, I guess it
eight
depends.
long seams on one box cushion,
Yeah.
and that's not even counting the little stuff or putting in the zipper.
Well, you
or
put
all
in the
this stuff.
zipper, yeah.
Right? And or you're making cording or any sort of,
Mhm.
putting a cover on anything or a trim or anything. So, anyway, wind more than one bobbin.
There you go.
I wound 2, and I think it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, and so make sure you're well stocked on bobbins. That's always good advice here on the podcast.
And we've said that over and over again. The other thing is,
Okay, before you get to the other thing, we need to stop and take a break.
I was just going to say, the other thing is, don't forget to take a break.
Don't forget to take a break from your podcast or
From
take a
your
break
sewing.
from
Get
your
up
sewing.
and down, move around. Don't just sit at that sewing machine.
Okay, great. We'll be right back after this message break.
Mallory, I'm always impressed with baby lock machines, and I always think, this is the best. You can't get better than this. And then guess what happens?
They make
Something
it better.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what happens? Okay, they put a camera on their highest end machine, right?
Right.
So let me repeat this. There is a camera on the machine.
Yes, and I can take a picture of my manicure if I want.
Yes. So they put a camera on the machine so you can scan what you're going to embroider, da-da-da. But then what they did now, they've made the technology even more accessible. Okay.
Okay. So, how can they impress me?
Well, instead of having the machine with the camera on it, if you don't have that machine, the new Altair and Meridian machines let you use an app on your smartphone to transfer a picture of your project wirelessly to the machine so that you can have this perfect positioning on other machines as well. So not only, they've just made the technology even more accessible to everybody.
I'm like living
in a fantasy world.
in the future.
Yes, the future is now.
The future has happened. I have a communicator on my wrist.
That's right.
That's
right.
Okay, so I don't know how much more I can be impressed.
Yeah, I think that the launch of the new baby lock machines right now in 2019 might be more impressive than the Apple releases that are going on. So if you want to see these machines in person, you can go to babylock.com and you can use their retailer locator to go see a machine at a dealer. And that's another thing, of course, we love about baby locks, right? Are their fabulous dealers, they're independent retailers. So and then I guess we've gotten to a place, maybe the closest we're gonna get to Baby Lock naming a machine after you.
What?
Yes.
They named a machine ZD?
Yeah, so not quite. They have the new Altair and Meridian that are the machines that work with that perfect positioning app, but now they have a machine called the Ariel as well. So
you mean like Ariel in the
Yes,
sky, not like
AER.
Ariel the mermaid.
AERIAL.
That would be as close as maybe I'm gonna get.
All right. So once again, go to babylock.com, check out that retailer locator, and check out the wonderful videos they have that show you what the heck we're talking about with this perfect positioning app on your smartphone.
I continue to be impressed.
Yes. Sewing out loud. All right, we're back from our break, right?
Right. And
What did you do?
about
Did you drink?
stitch length.
Wait, did you get a drink of water? Did you stretch? What did you do during your break, Mom?
Actually,
eat a
I looked
snack?
at my notes.
Looked at your notes?
I should have done something more important, but I
No,
looked
but
at my notes.
anyway, yes.
So to recap, we've talked about stitch length, needles. Did we talk about
you
seam
missed
allowance?
this. You missed
Okay.
this. Yeah, this is
So
great.
So
Great.
we've talked about stitch length, needles, thread, and seam allowance, 1/2 inch. Why a 1/2 inch? Because that's the standard. I don't know. And I'll tell you another thing. It's much easier to calculate. For instance, if I'm covering a boxed cushion and my cushion is 23 inches, I know I need 24 inches
Ta-da.
of fabric. So it's easy. I'm not working with eighths of inches and getting myself, and I will tell you, I just had a day of funny math mistakes. Not really math mistakes, but like, oh, I need a 4-inch piece here, and I cut 4 inches instead of 5 inches.
Someone told me that I was good at math today, so
Wow. Wow, I got to meet that person.
Yeah, right.
We better log that one. Anyway, so 1/2-inch seam allowance is standard because you usually don't have a pattern, right? When you're making this up as you go along.
Yes.
Or you've taken, now be careful, and we're going to talk about that, making a pattern from what is on there already, where you take it apart. We're going to talk about that.
Okay,
But anyway,
I also just want to clarify. I want to give some perspective here again. If you have a pattern that calls for smaller seam allowances than that, beware. Okay, so if you're making a pillow, okay, that's going to
don't do it. Don't make it. It'll fall
apart. It's going to get stuffed and stuff, blah, 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 blah. You need that 1/2 inch. So Mom's saying, 1/2 inch is standard and it's great and it's wonderful because you can just add an inch and you'll get that 1/2 inch on either side. It
also fits under the presser foot, and the entire seam is held in place by the top presser foot and the bottom of the feed ducts. It is supported. If you go with this 1/4-inch stuff, it's not as precise, it's not as pretty, and you don't have enough seam allowance.
No, the seam allowance helps you. And we did a whole podcast on seam allowance and how it actually helps. And I have seen some of those patterns. They'll come from quilting people. And it's a pattern for like a poof or
a purse
or a somewhat home decky semi-furniture thing. And they're using these 1/4-inch seam allowances. And I don't think it's appropriate. Okay?
If you do need a 1/4-inch seam allowance for some reason, like to get rid of that bulk or something, you need to sew on the 1/2 inch.
There
and
you
then
go,
cut
and then
it
trim
down to. Otherwise, you have a lousy seam.
Or just be okay. The thing is like a lot of times, I'm not saying you never have to reduce bulk, but you're like putting this on a pillow, right?
Yeah,
no one's feeling it.
In Home Dec, well, we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry if I'm getting too far into
But
it.
we'll talk about reducing bulk. Most of the time, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't,
because it's not going up against a body, right? It's going on over a pillow form or something,
and it's big.
Yeah.
So,
but moving on, I guess.
Moving on, talking about big.
Okay.
Segue.
There you go.
You want to make sure you have a nice big work area.
Ooh.
Not only to cut or measure or all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also to sew.
Yeah.
Because usually these projects are bigger and they are heavier.
Yes.
So anytime you have something like this, you need it to be supported by the table that you're sewing on or whatever. Now, I have a story about a boat cover, right?
Uh-huh.
A boat cover's pretty big. I mean, our boat's not big, but its cover is. So our boat's only 22 and a half feet, okay? That's not a big boat. That's like a dinghy for a lot of people's boats.
Some people think they're just so small.
Okay. So anyway, but my husband, I need this boat cover fixed and blah, blah, blah. So I took my machine and put it in the middle of the living room floor, right? And brought the boat cover in, laid it out, and basically I sewed with the power pedal under my knee. I set crisscross because I needed that much room.
Sure.
Okay, that was probably the biggest thing I've ever sewn.
Yeah.
And anytime I do that, I take the machine down to the floor, okay? And now, if you can't sew on the floor, you could put it, say, on a chair and you sit on the floor, something like that. But you've got to have that supported. You've got to think about, if you don't have it supported, you're just going to struggle with every seam you make.
You'll struggle because your projects will be falling away.
Right. Be pulling away from under the machine. You
also, though, you want enough room to where it's like spread out enough to where you can feed everything.
That's right.
I mean, who listening or here in this room right now has not had an extra layer of fabric creep under something?
That's correct.
When you don't have enough space.
The other thing, too, is you want to keep it clean. So if
Yeah.
you're cluttered, you don't know what's happening, you don't know where it's going, all of a sudden something's gotten on it, blah, blah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
No, that's great. And
So
that's good.
Now,
that's a good point.
good way to extend your work area, say you have, you're on one table or whatever, is to back another table up to it.
Right.
Okay, so that's a good way to do it. We have a table that has an extension on the back, and not only that, it can back up to other tables we have in the studio.
I like the idea of creating a temporary workspace
right.
for these things when they start to get real big.
Well, and another thing is you may only work on something this large 3 times in your life or something. It's not like you need an upholstery studio.
Well, and if you really are, if you're listening
to us. Ping pong table's also a good thing to work on. Yeah.
If you're listening to us and you really are normally a quilter, and you're used to just piecing some small pieces together, and you're only going to fix a boat cover once in your life. Yeah, you don't need to revamp your whole sewing studio. Of course not.
But, think about it. Think about that the weight's there. And, a few minutes of reconfiguring something or moving your sewing machine to the dining room table because it's bigger, or the ping pong table, or whatever you have to do. I know people that have also used the pool table, but the pool table person sometimes would get upset. So
you're not
either cover it or do it when they're not there.
Put your machine on another table,
whatever,
and then put your
whatever.
Let your fabric be on the pool table.
Whatever.
There you go. Yeah.
But anyway, do think about that. It will save you a lot of grief.
Yes, I love that tip. People don't think about it enough.
Right.
When they take on a big, huge project, and it might be a reason. I know you're wanting to move on. It might be a reason that you say no to something. Okay.
Oh, yeah, like if you're doing it for someone who's requested it versus your own idea.
Yes, like if an acquaintance or someone says, "Can you hem my 40-foot drapes?" and you are Fred in your tiny sewing room that you made out of your laundry room, and Fred says, "No, I can't make a temporary sewing space," or something like that. And I mean, I'm saying this about Fred.
Also, it's not worth it.
She probably would just be like, "Yeah, I can do it," but good on maybe it's not worth it. But anyway,
and
it might be a reason you don't want to handle some types of projects.
This sort of comes to another thing too, is how big is the project or moving the project. The item should be close to where you're sewing. So if you're doing this for someone else, okay, you're covering couch cushions. Don't measure, go make the cushion.
You take the
cushion. And then go back. You need the cushion.
Take the cushion with you.
Maybe if all the cushions are the same, you only need one cushion.
Yeah.
But you can wind up with some real grief, okay? You need to know it fits. You need to know how it fits when you try. Not every time is it going to be perfect, and you may have to do something.
Home Dec is like bookbinding.
It is.
It's like you take the measure of the thing and you use the thing as the ruler. Not so sometimes it's more accurate that way. But
like I said, I've had people say, "Oh, just measure this and do," and I'm like, "No, I have to take it with me." Well, I don't. Well, then I'm not doing it. Okay, because I'm not going to go back and forth. First of all, to their place and do it. Okay. Another thing is, you can't have a project where you do it in someone else's area, in someone else's home, whatever. You may have to go to their business, and maybe it's easier to go to their business when the hours are closed, take the drapes down, lay them on their floor, and
hem
do
them
it there.
real quick.
Yeah.
That.
So you can think about it that way, but the item should be within your reach.
Yeah.
Okay. You shouldn't. You should be able to refer to it while you're in the middle of something.
Yeah, for if that's at all possible, make that happen.
Right.
Okay, so go on. Yeah, go on.
I've got another little funny thing. It's about Velcro.
What does that say?
What it says, to me, I understand it. Velcro attached. So here's what happens with Velcro.
Velcro attached.
If I have put on the hook side, Velcro is hook and loop tape. One side is hook and one side is loop. And then, you put them together and the hooks hold on to the loops. That's what it's called.
Yep.
Hook and loop tape. Velcro is a brand name. So if I'm working with hook and loop tape and I have to put on the hook side and then continue to sew a piece for some reason, right? Take the loop side and put it on there.
Okay.
Okay? Because if you start sewing and you've got that hook thing moving around, okay, and you don't know where it is, it's going to catch everything.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let's just, hold on. I have an idea for maybe somebody who thinks the way I do.
Okay.
You need to put on a 4-piece strip of Velcro. Okay.
A 4-piece?
4-inch. Sorry.
4-inch.
4-inch piece of Velcro. Yeah.
Right.
Somebody who thinks like me. So you cut that
And
off.
talks like you and all that other
You
stuff.
have a roll of this stuff. And
Right.
we talked about that in our Halloween episode.
Right.
So you cut off your 4-inch piece.
Right.
And you go ahead and you sew, the hook side down.
Right.
And then you're going to pop that loop side down on it.
Right.
Not only is it going to prevent it from catching, but you will know where the other
Well, that's
half
the other
is.
thing. You don't lose it. It's so much fun.
That's what I thought
No.
you were really
well,
saying.
that
first.
honestly, I do it. I do that often. I just keep them together until I have to separate
and then
them.
you can. Yeah, it's a good
right.
idea.
Now Velcro, we will address it in another part of the series
shall
because we're going to
address
talk
Velcro.
about what side to put where and why you would do it and how you would sew it on, all that stuff, wide, thick, thin, whatever, but and other closures. But I just want to put that out there in case anybody's really ready to start doing home deck before
Somebody's
they finish.
got their roll of Velcro
right,
ordered.
before they finish reading or before they finish listening to our podcast. So the other thing that you really are going to have around are other tools. One is a hammer or a tamper, things like this. You may. If you don't have a hammer in your studio, if you don't have a pair of pliers in your studio, if you don't have hemostats in your studio, or tweezers or pickups or whatever you may call them, all these things that I just think are part of sewing, okay, you probably need to have them.
Yeah, the toolbox comes into play a bit more in home deck.
Yes.
A bit more in bag making. Maybe a bit more in jeans, outerwear making, like the hammers and the pliers and stuff. But yeah, no, good point. I mean, and if the only tools you have in your home are in a garage or a space where they're around sawdust and oil and car and blah blah blah, you do need a set for your fabrics.
Right.
You don't want to have the hammer that we use to build the chicken coop.
And I hesitate to say this, but probably for sewing, you might not need the most expensive one.
Sure.
Although that's what I have because I'm a tool freak. My husband and I
It was really hard for Mom to say that you don't need an expensive something for your sewing room.
My
Just
husband and I
that.
fight over tools. He had my tool. He had a tool of mine that was left to me by my father. And he says it's his by marriage. And I say, no, it's mine by heredity. And my tools are my tools, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I also found I found my green-handled pliers in his truck after I looked for them for 2 years.
You probably thought I lost him too, so I got a dog in this fight too.
I don't know, but don't steal my tools.
Anyway,
another thing is things that you might measure with. So home deck is bigger, longer, whatever. You may need a long hardware type measuring tape.
A tape. Like a metal.
Yes, that's 30
tape.
feet long
There
or
you
whatever.
go.
I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. But, your 60-inch dressmaker's measuring tape and maybe your 24-inch, quilter's ruler probably isn't going to hack it. You're probably going to need something longer, bigger.
Okay, I don't think you have this on there, but any little tips on cutting before we, or just a little taste before we put that in a longer episode?
Well, I think the one thing about cutting or whatever, my rule about when you fold something over or when you're cutting something on the fold to always take a nip out of the center. I take a nip out of all of my centers of all of my pieces.
Okay.
Just like we did I say in garment sewing, if you know where that's now. For one reason, I don't pin a lot.
Yeah.
I have developed a lot of techniques without pinning. So if I know my halfway mark, I'm a happy person.
Yeah. And do you normally use a rotary cutter?
I do use the rotary
for
cutter.
Home deck. Okay.
What do I not use?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pronounce
I
it
use
a little bit.
Mostly a rotary cutter, and I will tell you, I just did all of these, box cushions, right? People, save your money up for a serger. Okay, a lot of people in home deck do not finish their seams.
Yeah.
That's industry acceptable. Okay? It's also why the cushions in my camper were coming apart.
It's also why the cushions on my couch right
are coming
now
apart, right? Because that's a chenille type fabric.
Yeah, that's a chenille type fabric.
They're big and bulky, but they're loosely woven sometimes. And I was sitting there, just like surging all the edges of all these squares and triangles, or not triangles, they were rectangles.
Rectangles, yeah.
They were rectangles and squares. I didn't have any triangles this time. So, but I was like, and I'm sorry, I'm going to preach. Get ready. I'm on the pulpit.
They already know.
Baby lock, baby lock, baby lock. I am telling you, I know it doesn't look like it's in your reach sometimes because what do they start at, 1,500 now or something?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
somewhere. Something
Here's
like
another
that.
thing you can do. That friend of yours who has one? Okay. Tell her about the brand new one that came out. Okay. You
And
could
buy hers.
yeah, him or her, whoever,
Whoever.
right? Tell them that the new one is out and you're so excited and you can't wait
Okay.
to see them have it. And have you thought that they could buy your other one?
You need to put a notification in Facebook Marketplace. So first of
Yes.
all, we're big time supporters of dealers, okay?
Yes.
If you can afford to get one from a dealer,
Yes.
do it, okay? Put a thing in Facebook Marketplace. Here's what happens sometimes with sewing machines and sergers.
Right.
Someone may die. Someone may just have gotten something and they just don't want it.
They don't know its value.
Whatever.
They do not know its value.
And I have just heard the stories in our Facebook group of
Right.
people getting some really good deals that way. And also in our Facebook group, people saying to others, "Get the baby lock. It changed my life." And we didn't pay them to say
No,
that.
no.
It truly is a game changer.
I mean, Baby Lock supports us in our business.
I think they are sponsoring this episode.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, now that I said that, I could go on and on. So, we do get...
Yeah, full disclosure. Yes.
Full disclosure.
Yes.
We get stuff, and the reason we get it from Baby Lock is because we're believers and we like them.
We paid Baby Lock a lot of money
Yeah,
for a lot of
that's
years
true.
to
to be
buy
able to
their
sell their
stuff
machines
and
right,
everything.
right, right.
Yeah, so we
But
used
what
to pay
I'm
them
saying,
money.
everybody, is I just, if you are going to sew in any type of volume whatsoever, I can't believe you don't want a serger. It made the inside look so nice. It made it easy to deal with. Part of my fabric was chenille. It was, it was easily raveling. I could handle it. I could throw it across the room.
Well,
and I was
handle it is
intact.
the right word.
Yes.
You throw any fabric
Yes.
at one of those. We're talking about the Baby Locks that have the self-tension, the self-threading.
Right. This would start with the... Well, what
Clips
do they
or
call it now? Is
That's
it
a
the
really good
Imagine?
question. No, I think it's called oh gosh.
It's got a different name.
It's not called the Valiant. That's the one up from that.
Right.
Okay, well.
But you want the self-threader.
Yeah, self-threaders.
Because the self-threader, when we say self-threader, that actually includes a lot of other things. It includes self-adjusting tensions, okay?
A very strong
it's
motor.
a thread delivery system. There's things about it that when it self-threads, other things
happen.
There's other characteristics, there's other elements at that level that you want. If you can get the top of the line and you can get the cover stitch, go for it. If somebody's in love with you, go for it. If you have 15 grandchildren and you spend a lot of money on them, they all need to give you their $5 birthday money
There you go.
for Christmas or whatever. But I mean, it is, I sat there using it yesterday and I thought, I would give up a lot of things to do this, to have this machine.
Okay, yeah. I like how I was just listening to another podcast, and this woman was talking about how she has someone clean her house.
Yes.
And she says, if I wasn't able to afford that for a long time.
Right.
Now I can afford it. And if we had to tighten the budget, it's not the first thing I would
She
get
would
rid
give up
of.
food.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
right.
So,
No,
like,
right.
you're saying, say we had to downsize the sewing studio for
Right.
whatever reason.
Right.
This is not,
Right.
this would be one of the last things you'd give
Absolutely.
up.
If
Yeah.
I had to eat out once less a month, which would be really hard for me because I don't hardly eat out. Nobody takes me any place, you guys. But anyway, look how little this violin is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would, it enhances what you're doing. It makes it so much better. It makes it easier. Anyway, that I can step
That was
down.
a nice tangent.
I can
Good
step
job.
down from the pulpit,
Yep,
but
good job.
that's the way I feel about that.
All right. I think we need to wrap this up.
Okay, I want to
What's
talk
your
about
last
one
nugget?
more thing. This
Yes.
is a nugget that could be included in anything. So this camper fabric I had picked out, and I had put it in a plastic bag, and on a piece of paper in a big like magic marker, like a Sharpie marker, permanent marker, on the piece of paper.
Marker.
I think it was Magnum, which I love. Anyway, I had written camper, so that it was labeled. I put it in the plastic bag. I put all this fabric in. Now this is a big, huge, like quilt size plastic bag thing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And I went to take it out, and the ink had degraded and had put a shadow on the plastic. And I thought, oh no, what if this is on my fabric? It wasn't. But there you go. So don't close up something like that, a permanent ink. It still degrades.
Yeah.
Right? And it gives off gases and
good
stuff.
call.
So anyway, be careful how you label it. I guess I should have just written it in
put
pencil.
it on the outside or something.
Yeah, I like it in the bag. It doesn't come off. I don't have to
right,
worry about
right.
it.
No,
you
you're
know,
right.
I've done this 100 times. I think part of it was I know where it was, and it got hot, and it was in there for a while.
It was in there for a while.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it was in there.
for a while.
It was in there for a while. It was in there for months. Okay,
Right.
So, but what I'm saying is, be careful. You know, things need air.
Yeah.
That's a
No,
clue.
you were
I
kind of.
mean, that's a clue.
cautionary
And
tale.
you know, magic markers. I mean, Sharpie's good. I actually color on fabric with it.
Yeah.
You know, and but anyway, be careful. Don't do that. I almost had a big boo boo.
Almost had a sadness. Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. You can get to us. Go like us on Instagram. Okay. That's an ask. That is, if you love the podcast, go to Instagram and search So Here Calm. And it would be so lovely for you to follow us there. I appreciate it. I think the last post I shared is the clown from It knitting red balloons.
I know, and I couldn't hardly stand it. I don't like it.
You know what was so funny
I don't
is
like it.
Vogue Knitting made that post, and the original post is actually like the clown. It's a video. It's so funny. I don't like scary movies either.
I just don't like clowns.
Both.
There
things.
you go.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. Instagram, get to me at Mallory@SoHere.com. And ZD, take it away.
So long and so happy.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.